The transport ship landed on Nexus Prime with a loud hiss of steam and the grinding of metal on stone. And among the hundreds of alien students who stepped onto the platform that morning, nobody noticed the small human girl with the worn duffel bag. Elena Voss walked through the crowd with her head slightly down, her dark hair falling across her face like a curtain she could hide behind. And her footsteps made almost no sound on the polished floors of the Galactic Union Academy. All around her towered creatures from 100 different worlds, and each one of them seemed more impressive than the last. The Cathari warriors stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and 4 eyes, their scaled skin gleaming like armor under the artificial lights, and their voices rumbled like thunder when they spoke to one another. The Villani scholars floated more than walked, their pale blue skin almost translucent, and their large dark eyes held the wisdom of a telepathic species that had mastered the mind sciences. Long before humans learned to make fire, the Sharth engineers clicked and hummed as they moved, their crystalline bodies catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. And they spoke in frequencies that made Elena's teeth ache. And then there was her, just a human, a member of a species that the rest of the galaxy considered soft, fragile, and remarkably unremarkable in every way that mattered. Elena found her assigned dormitory without asking for help, and she unpacked her few belongings in silence while her Villani roommate watched with poorly hidden disappointment. "I requested a Cathari roommate," the Villani said, her mental voice pushing gently against Elena's mind. "But I suppose a human will have to do." Elena just nodded and continued folding her clothes. The first week of classes confirmed what everyone already believed about the quiet human girl who sat in the back of every lecture hall. She never raised her hand to answer questions, and when professors called on her directly, she gave short answers in a soft voice that barely carried to the front of the room. She ate alone in the dining hall, always choosing a corner table with her back against the wall, and she never joined the social groups that formed naturally among the other students. The Cathari students in particular found her presence amusing, and a group of them led by a massive male named Tarek made a game of testing the human whenever they crossed paths. "Look at this tiny creature," Tarek laughed one morning as Elena walked past him in the main corridor, and his 4 arms spread wide to block her path. "Tell me, little human, what exactly is your species good for?" His companions laughed, their rumbling voices echoing off the walls. And several other students stopped to watch the entertainment. Elena looked up at him with eyes that revealed nothing, and her voice came out flat and quiet when she spoke. "Excuse me," she said. "I need to get to class." Tarek leaned down until his face was close to hers, and his breath smelled like copper and meat. "On my world, creatures like you are what we call prey," he said, and his 4 eyes gleamed with amusement. "You have no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom, and you move so slowly that even our children could catch you without trying." Elena stood perfectly still, and something flickered in her eyes for just a moment, something that Tarek was too busy enjoying himself to notice. "Humans are a prey species that somehow stumbled into space," Tarek continued, playing to his audience, "and the only reason the Union allows you here is because they feel sorry for you." The watching crowd laughed, and Elena simply stepped around the massive Cathari and continued walking to her class without another word. Tarek watched her go with a satisfied grin, convinced that he had put the human in her proper place. What Tarek did not know, what nobody at the academy could have known, was that Elena's student file was missing several critical pieces of information. The official record showed a normal human female from Earth, age 22, with adequate test scores and no notable achievements, but there was another file, one that existed only in the most secure databases of the Terran government. And that file told a very different story. That file was sealed with a classification level that did not officially exist, and it was marked with a designation that would have made even the proudest Cathari warrior feel a chill run down his spine. Terran Apex Division Asset Designation. Hollow status. Active Elena had been identified at age 6 when a government psychologist noticed something unusual in her test results. Something that had made him cancel his lunch plans and call a secure line that very few people knew existed by age 8. She had begun training at a facility that appeared on no map. By age 12, she could track, hunt, and kill creatures that most humans did not know existed by age 18. She had completed her first solo operation, and the details of that mission remained classified because the truth would have started a panic across 3 star systems. Now she sat in the back of an alien classroom on a world far from Earth. And she took notes in a small notebook while her professor explained basic xenobiology to students who would never understand what sat among them. The quiet girl with the worn duffel bag was not at the academy because she needed an education. She was there because the Apex Division required its operatives to spend time among normal society between deployments, to remind them what they were protecting, to keep them from losing touch with their humanity entirely. Elena looked up from her notes as a HFY student made a joke about human weakness, and the class laughed while the professor tried to restore order. She did not react to the laughter, and her expression remained as blank as it always was. But inside her mind, in the quiet place where the hunter lived, she was counting the exits in the room, counting the seconds it would take to reach each one, counting the ways she could disable every creature present if the situation required it. 17 HFY warriors in this room alone, and not one of them understood that they were sitting in a classroom with something far more dangerous than anything their Deathworld had ever produced. The prey species had sent one of its hunters to live among the Myrae, galaxy's proudest predators, and the predators had no idea what was coming. The survival training module was supposed to be a simple exercise, and when the announcement came that all first-year students would spend 5 days on the forest moon of Virus 6, most of the academy treated it as a vacation from their studies. Elena read the mission briefing 3 times and memorized every detail about the indigenous wildlife, the terrain patterns, and the weather systems that could shift without warning. Her assigned team gathered at the transport bay on a cold morning, and she could see the disappointment on their faces when they realized who would be joining them. Torek was there with his 4 arms crossed over his massive chest, and beside him stood 2 other HFY who looked equally unimpressed. The only non-HFY member besides Elena was a Vallani named Sira, whose telepathic abilities made her valuable for communication, but whose delicate frame made her poorly suited for physical challenges. "This is a joke," Torek said when he saw Elena approach. "The Academy expects us to protect this human while also completing the mission." Elena said nothing and simply checked her equipment bag with quick, efficient movements that caught Sira's attention. The Vallani watched the human's hands move over each item, checking straps and seals and blade edges with a precision that seemed out of place for someone who supposedly knew nothing about survival. Transport dropped them on the northern edge of a vast forest that stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction, and the instructor's voice crackled through their communication devices with final orders. "Reach the extraction point 70 miles south within 5 days," the voice said. "Avoid the indigenous predators. Work as a team. And remember that this exercise has a 12% injury rate, even among prepared students." The communication cut out, and Torek immediately took charge of the group. "The human stays in the middle of the formation," he announced. "Sira will monitor for threats with her telepathy, and the rest of us will handle any creatures we encounter." Elena nodded without argument and fell into position, and the group began their march through the dense forest. The first 2 days passed without incident, and Torek grew more confident with each mile they covered. He told stories of hunts on his homeworld, of creatures 10 times the size of anything on Virus 6. And his companions listened with admiration while Elena walked in silence. Sarah found herself watching the human more and more often, and she could not explain the strange feeling that something about Elena did not match the image she presented. The human moved through the forest with unusual grace, her feet finding solid ground even in the most difficult terrain, and her eyes constantly scanned their surroundings in a pattern that seemed almost automatic on the second night. Sarah approached Elena while the others slept. "You are not what you appear to be," Devolani said quietly, and her telepathic senses pressed gently against the human's mind. Elena looked up from the small fire she was tending, and for just a moment, Sarah felt something in the human's mind that made her pull back in surprise. It was like touching a wall of ice, cold and hard and completely impenetrable. "I'm exactly what I appear to be," Elena said in her soft voice. "Just a human trying to pass this class." Sarah did not believe her. But before she could ask more questions, the forest exploded into chaos. The attack came from above, and the creature that dropped into their camp was unlike anything the textbooks had described. A virus stalker stood nearly 7 feet tall at the shoulder, with 6 muscular legs built for explosive speed and a head full of teeth designed to crush bone. The instructors had promised that stalkers would not come this close to established paths, but here one stood with its black eyes fixed on the warm bodies that had wandered into its territory. Torek froze. The mighty Cathari, warrior who had boasted of hunting monsters on his death world, stood completely still as his 4 eyes went wide with terror. The other Cathari scattered in different directions, their survival instincts overriding their pride. And Sarah pressed herself against a tree with her hands raised in useless defense. The stalker's head swung toward her, sensing her fear, and its legs tensed for the killing leap. Elena moved. Sarah would spend many sleepless nights trying to understand what she witnessed in the next 11 seconds, and she would never find words that fully captured what the human became. Elena did not run toward the creature, and she did not run away from it. She flowed. Her body seemed to find angles that should not exist, slipping through the stalker's field of vision in ways that kept her always in its blind spots. The creature spun to track her but could not find her, and its confusion gave her the opening she needed. Elena's knife appeared in her hand without any visible motion to draw it, and she struck 3 times in rapid succession at points along the stalker's neck and spine that should have been protected by thick muscle and bone. But Elena knew exactly where the nerve clusters sat, beneath the skin, and she knew exactly how much force each strike required. The stalker made a sound like breaking glass and collapsed to the forest floor, its legs twitching once before going stilly. 11 seconds from first movement to final strike. Elena wiped her blade clean on the creature's fur and slid it back into her belt with the same efficiency she had shown when checking her equipment. "We should relocate," she said in a voice that carried no emotion at all. "Stalkers rarely hunt alone, and the others will have heard this one's distress call." Torek stared at her with all 4 of his eyes, and something had changed in the way he looked at the small human fear. The mighty Cathari warrior was afraid of the quiet girl who had spent 2 days walking silently in the middle of their formation. "How did you know how to do that?" he asked, and his voice came out smaller than he intended. Elena looked at him with those empty eyes that revealed nothing. "I read the briefing materials," she said, and then she turned and began walking south toward the extraction point. Remaining 3 days of the exercise passed in tense silence, and nobody questioned Elena's suggestions about routes or rest stops. When they reached the extraction point with 18 hours to spare, the instructor noted with surprise that the team had suffered no injuries. Despite encountering a stalker, Torek said nothing about what had happened in the forest, and when other students asked about the exercise, He changed the subject quickly, but Sira could not stop thinking about what she had seen. And she could not stop wondering what other secrets the quiet human carried behind those walls of ice in her mind. The prey species had shown its teeth, and nothing at the academy would ever be quite the same. Rumors spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. And within a week of the Virus 6 exercise, every student had heard some version of the story about the quiet human girl. Some said she had killed the stalker with her bare hands, while the HFY warriors cowered in terror. Others claimed she had moved so fast that nobody could see her, appearing behind the creature like a ghost before striking it down. A few whispered that she was not human at all, but some kind of weapon created in a secret laboratory. The truth would have disturbed them more than any of these fantasies. But Elena gave them nothing to work with. She returned to her routine of sitting in the back of lectures, eating alone in the dining hall, and speaking only when absolutely necessary. Sira tried several times to engage her in conversation, but the human deflected every question with short answers and empty smiles. "You saved my life," Sira said one evening when she found Elena studying alone in the library. "I think I deserve to know who you really are." Elena looked up from her tablet with that blank expression that revealed nothing. "I am a student from Earth," she said. "The same as I was before the exercise." "No," Sira replied. And she sat down across from the human without asking permission. "You are something else entirely, and I will figure out what." Elena studied the Villani for a long moment, and something almost like amusement flickered in her eyes. "You are welcome to try," she said. And then she returned to her reading. The weeks that followed gave Sira plenty of opportunities to observe the human, and the more she watched, the more details she noticed. Elena always sat with her back to a wall, never with her back to an open room. Her eyes constantly moved, tracking every person who entered or left whatever space she occupied. She never relaxed completely, not even when she appeared to be sleeping, and her body always seemed coiled like a spring waiting to be released. These were not the habits of a normal student, and Sira began to research human behavior patterns to understand what she was seeing. What she found confused her even more. Humans were classified as a minor species in galactic records, notable only for their rapid technological development and their unusual persistence in harsh conditions. They had no natural weapons, no special senses, and no remarkable physical abilities that would explain what Elena had done to that stalker. But there were gaps in the records, places where information should exist but somehow did not. And Sira began to suspect that someone had deliberately hidden parts of human history from the galactic community. The answer came from an unexpected source on a night that would change everything. A delegation from the Raxian Syndicate arrived at the academy for what was officially called a diplomatic visit. Though everyone knew the Syndicate were little more than pirates who had gained political power through violence and intimidation, the delegation brought guards. And the guards brought an attitude that made even the HFY students uncomfortable. One of these guards was a massive creature named Vrix. And Vrix had developed a taste for causing pain that his superiors found useful, but difficult to control. On the third night of the visit, Sira made the mistake of walking alone through a service corridor that connected the dormitories to the main academic buildings. Vrix found her there, and his intentions were clear from the moment he blocked her path. "The Villani are known for their mental abilities," he said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "I have always wondered what it feels like to break a telepath." Sira's telepathic call for help scattered in all directions, but the corridor was empty, and her signal faded before it could reach anyone who might care. Vrix moved toward her with the confidence of a predator who had never faced real opposition. Then a voice spoke from the shadows behind him. "Step away from her." Rix turned to find Elena standing at the other end of the corridor, her small frame barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. The Raxian laughed with genuine amusement. "A human," he said, and his smile grew wider. "I will deal with you after I finish with the telepath." He turned back towards Sierra. Dismissing the human as irrelevant, that was his last mistake as an unbroken being. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. But it would haunt Rix for the rest of his life. Elena moved through the corridor like something from a nightmare, and her hands found every joint in the Raxian's body with surgical precision. She did not kill him. Killing would have been merciful. Instead, she dislocated every major joint one by one, working with calm efficiency while Rix screamed and begged in languages that Sierra did not understand when Elena finished. The Raxian lay on the cold floor in a position that no body should be able to achieve. Still alive, but shattered beyond any natural healing, Elena stood over him with not a single hair out of place, and her breathing had not even quickened. "You will never hurt anyone again," she said in that flat voice. And then she turned to Sierra. "Are you injured?" Sierra could not speak, could not move, could only stare at the human who had just dismantled a creature 3 times her size with her bare hands. Campus security found Rix 20 minutes later, and the investigation that followed produced no evidence and no witnesses. But Rix himself provided the only clue that mattered. Through swollen eyes and broken teeth, he gasped a single word to his superiors before losing consciousness: "Hollow." The effect was immediate and terrifying. The Syndicate delegation left Nexus Prime within the hour, their diplomatic mission abandoned without explanation. Their ships departed at maximum speed, as if fleeing from something that scared them more than any political consequence. Sierra confronted Elena that night in the small garden behind the dormitories. "What are you?" she demanded, and her voice shook with emotions she could not name. "What is hollow? And why did that word make the Syndicate run?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that Sierra had never heard before. "Earth is not the safe little garden world that the Union believes it to be," Elena said. "Our history is written in blood and violence, and some of us never stopped being what we once were." "And what is that?" Elena turned to face the Villani, and for the first time, Sierra saw something behind those empty eyes. Not cruelty, not madness, but something far more terrifying: certainty. "We are persistence predators," Elena said. "We do not chase our prey until it grows tired, Sierra. We chase it until it dies. And nothing in this galaxy can run far enough or fast enough to escape us once we begin the hunt." The stars above them seemed to grow colder, and Sierra understood that she was standing next to something that the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. A true apex predator, and it had been hiding among them all along. The weeks following the Syndicate incident brought changes that nobody could ignore, and the quiet human girl who had once been invisible suddenly found herself at the center of whispered conversations. Sierra became something like a companion to Elena, though she was never sure if the human considered her a friend or simply tolerated her presence out of some sense of obligation. Torek approached them one afternoon in the Academy Gardens, and his posture carried none of the arrogance that had defined him in their first meeting. "I need to understand," he said, and his 4 eyes would not meet Ellen's gaze. "My entire life I was taught that the Cathari are the ultimate predators, that our death world made us the strongest species in the galaxy. But you are something different." Elena studied him for a moment, and then she gestured for him to sit. "Your species evolved on a world that tried to kill you every day," she said. "You developed armor and strength and natural weapons because those were the tools you needed to survive." Torek nodded slowly. "Humans evolved on a world that was almost as dangerous," Elena continued. "But we took a different path, and that path made us into something that your people have never encountered." "What path?" Sierra asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. We evolved to run, she said finally. Not fast like some prey species, but farther than any other creature on our world could match. And we did not stop running until our prey collapsed from exhaustion. That sounds like weakness, Tarek said, though his voice held no mockery. It sounds that way to species who rely on power and speed, Elena agreed. But consider what it actually means to hunt this way, to follow a creature for hours or days, never letting it rest, never letting it escape, always appearing on the horizon no matter how far it runs. Sira felt a chill run through her body as she imagined being hunted by something that simply refused to stop. Our ancestors learned to read tracks in the dirt and blood on the leaves. Elena continued, they learned to predict where prey would go before the prey knew itself. And they learned patience that other predators could not understand. She paused and looked at Tarek with something almost like sympathy. The Kethari attack with overwhelming force, because that is what your world taught you. But humans learned to study our prey until we understood everything about it. And then we used that knowledge to destroy it. The stalker on Virus 6, Sira said, understanding finally dawning. You knew exactly where to strike because you had studied that species. Elena nodded. I spent 3 weeks reviewing everything the Union knows about virus stalkers before the exercise began. And I identified 7 points where a blade could disable the creature instantly. 3 weeks of preparation for an exercise that might not have included dangerous wildlife, Tarek said. And his voice held a new kind of respect. We prepare for everything, Elena said. It is what we do. The truth came out slowly over the following days as Elena began to trust her 2 unlikely companions. She told them about Earth's hidden history, about the wars and horrors that humans had inflicted on each other long before they reached the stars, about the capacity for violence that lived in every member of her species. She told them about the Apex Division, a program so secret that even most humans did not know it existed. They identified me when I was 6 years old, she said one evening as the 3 of them sat together in Sira's dormitory room. A psychologist noticed something in my test results that he had never seen before. And within a week I was taken to a facility that appeared on no map. What did they see in you? Sira asked. Elena's eyes grew distant, looking at something that only she could see. The capacity to become something other than human when the situation requires it. She said, to shut down every emotion, every hesitation, every moral restraint, and become pure purpose. Tarek shifted uncomfortably at her words. They trained me for 10 years, Elena continued. Every form of combat, every method of tracking and hunting, every way that a human body can be used as a weapon. And when I turned 18, they sent me on my first real mission. What was the mission? Tarek asked, though part of him did not want to know. A species of predator had escaped from a research facility and was hunting colonists on a frontier world. Elena said, the military tried to contain it with standard tactics, but the creature was too smart and too fast. So they sent me, one person against a creature that defeated military forces. Sira said with disbelief. Elena nodded. I tracked it for 6 weeks across a continent of wilderness, studying its patterns, learning its habits, waiting for the perfect moment. And when I understood it completely, I killed it in less than 10 seconds. The room was silent for a long moment. That is the human way, Elena said. We do not overwhelm our prey with strength like the Kethari, and we do not outthink it with telepathy like the Villani. We simply refuse to stop until the hunt is complete. How many missions have you completed? Tarek asked. 17 solo operations, Elena said. I have hunted sapient traffickers through asteroid fields and tracked war criminals across 12 star systems. And I once let a xenoform infestation hunt me for 2 months, so that I could learn its patterns well enough to destroy it. Tarek let out a breath that might have been a laugh if it had not been so full of fear. That first day when I mocked you in the corridor, he said. How many times could you have killed me? Elena looked at him with those empty eyes that now held something almost like warmth. 23, she said. But you were not a threat, Torek. You were just rude. I do not kill creatures simply for being rude. Sierra thought about all the times she had watched Elena walk through the academy, dismissed and mocked by species who considered themselves superior. The galaxy has no idea what humans really are, she said. Quiet Elena shook her head. They see our soft bodies, and our short lifespans and our lack of natural weapons. And they assume we are prey, she said. They have no concept that we spent millions of years becoming the most effective hunters our world had ever seen. And now you are here at the academy, Torek said. Why? The division requires its operatives to spend time among normal society between deployments, Elena explained. To remind us what we are protecting, to keep us connected to the humanity that we set aside when we hunt. She looked at both of them, and for the first time since Sierra had known her, a genuine smile crossed Elena's face. I did not expect to make friends, she said. But I suppose even hunters can be surprised sometimes. Outside the window, the stars continued their endless dance, and somewhere in the vast darkness between them, the galaxy remained ignorant of the truth that 3 students now shared humans were not a prey species that had stumbled into space by accident. They were predators who had simply chosen to hide their teeth, and when those teeth were revealed, the universe would never be the same. The warning sirens began screaming at midnight, and within minutes the entire academy was awake and moving toward the emergency assembly points. Elena dressed quickly and met Sierra and Torek in the corridor outside their dormitories, and together they pushed through the crowd toward the main communication center. The news was worse than anyone had feared a day. Vrex's hive mind had awakened in the Talus system, just 3 star jumps from Nexus Prime, and it was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. The screens showed footage from colony worlds that had already fallen, and the images made even the strongest Cathari students look away in horror. Billions of organisms moving as one, consuming everything in their path, stripping planets down to bare rock before moving on to the next target. The Union fleet is 18 days away, the Academy director announced to the assembled students. Evacuation transports will begin departing within the hour, and all students are ordered to board immediately. The crowd moved toward the landing bays, and Sierra noticed that Elena was walking in the wrong direction. Elena, she called out, pushing against the flow of bodies to reach her friend. The transports are the other way. Elena stopped and turned, and her face had changed in a way that made Sierra's heart freeze in her chest. The quiet human girl was gone, and something else looked out through those familiar eyes, something cold and patient and absolutely terrifying. The hive mind will reach Nexus Prime in 6 days, Elena said, and her voice carried no emotion at all. The evacuation transports are slow, and many of them will be caught before they can reach safe space. What are you saying? Torek demanded as he pushed through the crowd to join them. I am saying that someone needs to stop the hive mind before it spreads any further, Elena replied. And since the fleet is too far away, that someone will have to be me. Sierra grabbed Elena's arm with more strength than she knew she possessed. You cannot be serious, she said. It is a hive mind, Elena. Billions of organisms controlled by a single consciousness. And you are one person. Elena looked at her friend, and something almost like warmth flickered in those cold eyes. I have studied the Vrex for 3 years, she said. They have a weakness that nobody else knows about. A central processing node that coordinates the entire collective. And if that node is destroyed, the hive mind dies. Through an army of billions? Torek asked. Elena nodded slowly. Humans are very good at finding paths that others cannot see, she said. And we are very good at surviving in conditions that should kill us. She gently removed Sira's hand from her arm. Get on the transport, she said. Both of you, and tell the others what I told you about human hunters. Tell them that we are not what we appear to be. And tell them that when the galaxy needed someone to stand against the darkness, a human did not hesitate. Elena, Sira said. And tears were streaming down her pale blue face. Please, Elena smiled. And it was the warmest expression Sira had ever seen on the human's face. I will see you again, she said. I promise. Then she turned and walked toward the armory. Her footsteps as silent as they had always been. Elena departed Nexus Prime on a small scout ship designed for stealth rather than combat. And she spent the journey reviewing everything she knew about Rex biology and behavior. The hive mind had consumed 14 colonies in the 2 days since its awakening. And with each planet it absorbed, it grew smarter and more coordinated. But Elena had noticed something in the footage that others had missed. A pattern in how the billions of drones moved. A rhythm that suggested the central node was not buried deep within the swarm, as most experts believed. It was leading from the front. The Vrex were predators by nature, and their collective consciousness could not resist the urge to be first to the kill, which meant the node would be at the leading edge of any assault. Elena landed her ship on the mining moon of Talos 7. Directly in the path of the approaching swarm, she had 12 hours before the hive mind arrived. And she spent that time preparing her hunting ground with traps and obstacles and killing zones that would funnel the drones exactly where she wanted them. When the first wave of Rex appeared on the horizon, Elena felt the familiar calm settle over her mind like a blanket of ice. This was what she was made for. The drones came in endless waves, each one a perfect extension of the greater consciousness. And Elena met them with blade and bullet and bare hands when her weapons ran dry. She moved through the swarm like water through stone, never staying in one place long enough to be overwhelmed, always retreating toward the next trap, the next choke point, the next killing ground. Hours passed, and the moon's surface became covered with the bodies of drones that had failed to catch the small human, who refused to die. The hive mind grew frustrated, and its frustration made it careless. Elena saw the central node before it saw her. A massive organism surrounded by elite drones that moved with speed and precision far beyond the regular swarm. She had one chance. Elena detonated the charges she had planted around the node's approach path, and the explosion scattered the elite drones in every direction before they could reform. She was moving. The node saw her coming and sent a telepathic scream through the collective that made every drone within 1,000 miles turn toward her position. But Elena was faster. Her blade found the node's primary nerve cluster at the exact moment 100 drones reached her position, and she felt their claws tear into her body as the light faded from the node's eyes. The hive mind died in that moment. Billions of organisms suddenly cut off from the consciousness that had controlled them. And across 14 star systems, the swarm collapsed into chaos. Elena lay on the blood-soaked ground with wounds that should have killed her. And she smiled as she watched the drones wander aimlessly without their guiding intelligence. The hunt is complete, she whispered to the empty sky. The rescue team found her 46 hours later, still alive against all logic, and they carried her back to a ship that would take her home. Elena returned to the academy 3 months later, her body healed but marked with scars that would never fade. She walked into the dining hall on her first day back, and the entire room fell silent. Every species, every student, every professor stood and bowed their heads as the small human made her way to her usual corner table. Sira was waiting for her there with Torek at her side, and they embraced their friend with tears in their eyes. You kept your promise, Sira said. Elena smiled that rare warm smile. Humans always finish what we start, she said. It is what makes us who we are. She sat down with her back against the wall, her eyes automatically scanning the room for threats. And she began eating her breakfast, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The news of what she had done spread across the galaxy in days. And the quiet girl from Earth became a legend that parents would tell their children for generations. The Union officially reclassified humans from a minor species to something new. Something that had not existed in their databases before Apex Predator and in the quiet spaces of the galaxy, where the old powers whispered their secrets. A new truth took hold. Humans were not a prey species that had stumbled into space by accident. They were hunters who had simply been waiting for worthy prey, and now the universe knew their name.